Yeah, my name is Marion, and I'm interviewing to be an official Sonic fan.
In your letter, you left off after finishing Sonic Mania?
That's right, yeah. So I had originally planned to play 10 games in total. 5 of the classic style 2D games, and 5 of the more modern 3D games. Of the 2D games, the list consisted of Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and finally Sonic Mania. As for the 3D games, I had more options to choose from, and with my limited knowledge of the Sonic canon, I landed on Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Heroes, Sonic 06, and ending off with Sonic Generations.
Could you tell me why you chose those games?
Well, Sonic Adventure and Adventure 2, I think, were obvious choices. Every Sonic fan that I know swears by those 2 games, so that felt easy. Sonic Heroes maybe seemed important as a turning point after the Dreamcast era, even though it was more divisive. Plenty of gamers in my life have still vouched for Sonic Heroes, so I wanted to have my own take. I thought a lot about Sonic 06. I considered playing Sonic Unleashed instead, but I was always kind of fascinated by the legacy of Sonic 06. When someone tells me that a game is one of the worst, most unfinished games ever released, I can't help but ask what went wrong. I wanted to be a part of the experience of Sonic 06 in the context of what the series looked like when it came out. And there was a large part of me that wanted to end up liking Sonic 06. I mean, my goal with all of this was to become a Sonic fan. And, if I could find something to like about even Sonic 06, then, I would be on the right track. I think Generations sort of speaks for itself. For the same reason I played Mania, I wanted to end on a celebration. If the fan service would appeal to me, then I would probably be a fan, right? I did end up playing more games than I originally had planned to, but I'll save that for when we get to it.
Alright, in that case, why don't we just jump right into it?
Sounds good.
Tell me about Sonic Adventure.
So, before playing Sonic Adventure, I had to decide how I'd be playing it. It came out on the Sega Dreamcast, but I didn't own a Dreamcast, and I didn't really want to buy one. I have Sonic Adventure DX on the GameCube, but I heard that port has a lot of problems, and I went through this whole version deliberation thing with the 2D games and Sonic Origins beforehand, so I was sort of over dealing with, the issue of authenticity. I ultimately chose to just play the PC port through Steam with a handful of mods to help improve the experience and also reintroduce the original Dreamcast models and textures. That decision sort of set the standard for how I would play the rest of the games after this one, sort of modernized but still true to the original. Although the issue of what version to play would still come back up several times. There's this prevailing narrative that I've noticed when it comes to the Sonic series, that Sonic fumbled the transition to 3D. I mean, most of my life I've heard of the 90s icon that was made into a joke by being drugged through the third dimension. So I was plenty prepared to deal with some level of chink in Sonic Adventure. I like to think that I can find something to like about any work of art if I allow myself to be open to it. Thankfully, and to my surprise, I didn't have to search hard to find reasons to enjoy Sonic Adventure. The game is just good. It's got something special that can't be replicated. It has character. Sure, the physics can be a little inconsistent and the pacing is definitely a mess, but it still manages to be incredibly fun. I mean, the developers were shooting for the stars here. 6 playable characters, each with their own intersecting narratives, a diverse set of musical identities to go with each story, a decent variety of gameplay styles to keep things interesting. Sure, it doesn't all land perfectly. I'd imagine fans are mostly in agreement about the quality of the Big the Cat fishing levels. I really can't even say that I dislike those levels that strongly. Obviously, my preference was for Sonic's story. It was everything I think I expected from a 3D Sonic game. Beginning Sonic's story with a boss fight felt strange, but it did offer me a venue for better understanding Sonic's movement in 3D space. Emerald Coast, Sonic's first real stage, is at least as good a first level as Green Hill Zone from the original game. And both levels do a fantastic job of setting the tone for the rest of the game and guiding the player through what to expect going forward. Emerald Coast keeps it simple. The changes from 2D to 3D were big enough to discourage too much deviation from Sonic staples, like springs, boost pads, loops, etc. I was immediately confident that the game understood Sonic. Despite being so different from the 2D games, the spectacle of Sonic remains intact. And I knew it the moment I was first running toward the camera and away from a massive whale as it left a path of destruction behind it. Reflecting on it now, I guess I enjoyed every level in Sonic's story. They all felt unique in their presentation and had something memorable to offer. Windy Valley ups the ante, demanding more spatial awareness and understanding of the mechanics. The camera work was definitely ambitious in sections, and I wouldn't exactly call it smooth. The game actually suffers from a shitty camera for most of its runtime. I have a strong resilience to older game jank though, and didn't really register it much after Windy Valley was over. Ice Cap, Twinkle Park, Speed Highway, and Red Mountain are all of comparable quality to the first two stages. I actually played each of those stages several times as Sonic because they were so much fun to run through. I decided not to jump around characters until finishing my current one, so after I finished Sonic's story, and had a great time doing so, I moved on to Tails. Tails' story didn't take me long at all. Mostly all you do as Tails is race against Sonic through a selection of stages from Sonic's story. Tails can fly, so it was occasionally fun to see how I could break the routes and find shortcuts. I was a little shocked when I finished Tails' story in less than half the time it took me to finish Sonic's. Tails only had 5 stages when Sonic had 10, and I was replaying levels that I was already familiar with from Sonic's story. It turns out that all the other character stories are much shorter than Sonic's. Whereas I respected the ambition, I didn't feel like any of the other gameplay styles were fully realized. Knuckles was definitely much different than Sonic and Tails, but the Emerald hunting gameplay came off as underdeveloped, even though I didn't necessarily dislike it. It just got old, which I suppose would make its much shorter length a positive. Amy's stages just didn't do anything for me. Her movement isn't bad, just that the levels weren't that interesting. I was supposed to be running away from a stalker-type enemy, a green robot guy, but he simply never posed much of a threat to me. Amy's story was over before I knew it, which was good because it was already starting to seriously drag. Now, this is going to sound crazy, but I think I had a better time playing Big the Cat than Amy. Big the Cat's fishing gameplay may be sloppy and initially unclear, but at least it was completely different from the previous characters, and it only took me less than an hour to finish all of his levels. I had heard horror stories about that fucking cat. I don't know, I just didn't have the same issues. I read the tutorial when I was confused, and it cleared things right up. Now, am I eager to replay Biggs' stages anytime soon? No, absolutely not. But if I'm going through Sonic Adventure again in the future, I certainly don't see any need to skip it. The biggest shock to me was that Gamma's story ended up being my second favorite after Sonic's. Why do I never hear people talking about that part of the game, but no one will shut up about Big the Cat? Gamma's fun to control, has gameplay which stands out among the other characters, and features a narrative that's surprisingly moving. Gamma slaps, and I will die on that hill. After finishing the final boss of the game, I felt generally positive about the whole experience. Now, Sonic Adventure wasn't perfect, but what game is? Sonic Team swung hard here. Sure, maybe they left a little too much underdeveloped, but some of it really works. If I were to pinpoint the game's biggest strength, it would probably be its charm. Sonic Adventure is overflowing with charm. Casinopolis, for example, is barely a stage, only being 2 pinball tables and a small obstacle course in the sewer. However, I wouldn't trade that night's pinball table for anything. I didn't expect to, but I also fell in love with the game's hub world, Adventure Field. There are so many cozy locales that I could get lost in. It's always hard to articulate what makes a digital space special without recklessly abusing the word vibe. It's always some magical combination of audio and visuals that you could spend your whole life failing to meaningfully articulate. The jank is fun. What can I say? For instance, I think the voice acting is expressive and facial animation hilarious. I certainly don't see those traits as a negative. Whether the game feels like a cheesy mess or a campy masterpiece will be different from person to person. In the end, I landed on the latter. Sonic Adventure 2 was my most anticipated Sonic game. It was my friend's favorite Sonic game, and I started all of this with the goal of eventually being able to play it.
Why didn't you just play it?
What?
Why did you go through all these other Sonic games when your friend was only recommending Sonic Adventure 2?
I don't know. I've always been like this. I've still never played Final Fantasy VII, a game that I really want to play because, as silly as it sounds, I feel like I have to play all the prior ones first. I did the same thing with Half-Life 2. I really wanted to play Half-Life 2 because I've always heard that it's really good, but first I felt like I had to play Half-Life 1. And before playing Half-Life 1, I figured that I should probably play Quake, since Quake is such a significant part of Half-Life's identity. Then I thought, well, if I'm going to play Quake, then I should definitely play Doom first. Before Doom, I figured it'd be good to play Wolfenstein 3D, so I played Wolfenstein 3D, with keyboard-only controls, no less. Then I played Doom, also keyboard-only, and then Doom again on Ultraviolence, and then Doom 2. Then I spent half a year playing and creating custom levels for Doom, and then I played Doom for PS1, then Doom 64, and then I played Quake, and then I finally did get to Half-Life 1, but by the time I did, I was burnt out on first-person shooters and never ended up finishing it. To this day, I've still never touched Half-Life 2, but I am a massive Doom fan, so you win some, you lose some.
Okay, sounds like a problem, but go ahead.
So after deciding to play the Steam port with a handful of mods to clean it up, similar to the first game, I started Sonic Adventure 2. It was really difficult to separate the game in my head from its legacy. I mean, a good number of people have been extremely vocal to me over the years about it. I just worried that it could never live up to those expectations. That worry died, though, as soon as I saw Sonic jumping out of a helicopter and sliding down the incline of a busy street, sparks flying off the scrap metal he's riding on. I won't be the first person to say this, but City Escape is good. Like, really good. Starting the game with a stage like that, instead of, say, a boss fight in a small enclosed space, was definitely the better move. Not far into the game, it became clear that I wouldn't be running around in any hub world like Adventure Field in the first game, which I suppose leads me into my overall feelings on the game. So, Sonic Adventure 2 ditches the 6 separate unique stories for only 2, a hero story and a dark story, and truncates the gameplay variety to only 3 playstyles. Gone are the flying and racing of Tails' story, the slower stalker platforming of Amy's story, and the fishing of Big the Cat. Sonic Adventure 2 kept the speed gameplay from Sonic, the treasure hunting from Knuckles, and the mech combat from Gamma. Because of these changes, I feel like Adventure 2's biggest strength is its structure and pacing. I loved the Adventure Field in the first game, and I did miss it, but it was worth scrapping for the comparatively much more streamlined experience of playing Adventure 2. I never felt as though I got bored of one character's gameplay before the game decided to mix it up. You did technically have the choice to jump around different characters in Adventure 1, but that leaves it up to the player to pace out their own experience, which I feel is difficult if you haven't already played the game before. It'll be different from player to player, but I thought that this streamlined approach was a better fit for the more involved story that the game is trying to tell. I think that the game feel is generally better in Adventure 1, but Adventure 2 gives the levels and characters a lot more depth. The scoring system at Adventure 2 is actually fantastic and wouldn't have worked without making some compromises on character ability. You know, Sonic can't spam spin dash anymore, Knuckles' radar can't detect more than one emerald at a time, and Tails is a lot slower in the mech than Gamma was. Those tweaks limit your freedom and slow the game down a bit in places, but I for one believe they were for the best to allow for more polished and replayable levels. The grinding also more than makes up for the lack of an exploitable spin dash. As far as I'm concerned, grinding became a must-have mechanic for Sonic going forward. City Escape, Metal Harbor, Radical Highway, Green Forest, Sky Rail, and Final Rush are stages that I've revisited several times and will probably return to several more in the future. I don't think that it would be a stretch to say that one of Adventure 2's most memorable aspects is its story. The pre-established characters are presented wonderfully in the game, and those versions of them informed how I perceived their portrayals in future titles. The new characters, notably Shadow and Rouge, were iconic enough to become mainstays. I'm not claiming that the story isn't cheesy, it is, but that tone was established very early on, and I found it shockingly easy to get lost in the game's world after that. I was genuinely touched by Shadow's story, and I'm 26 years old and played it over 20 years after its initial release. When the last cutscene was playing and Sonic gave his final line, I did get choked up. The music certainly contributed to that. The soundtrack for the first Sonic Adventure was good, I'd say even great, but the Adventure 2 soundtrack is on an entirely different level. I have the MP3s on my phone right now. Every song is just so perfect for what it is. Couple that with the voice acting that improves on the original in almost every way, and you have a story that carries some real weight to it. Whatever the goal, to be funny, exciting, emotional, the story accomplishes it. But I believe that Sonic Adventure 2 really comes to life after the credits roll. A player can replay levels and optimize their results. I and many others listened to the soundtrack long after they were finished playing. Oh, and the Chao Garden. I almost completely forgot to mention how much time I lost in the Chao Garden. I didn't have any real feelings toward Adventure 1's Chao Garden. I mean, it was there. Sonic Adventure 2 just gave it a lot more depth. I didn't realize at the time that Sonic Team never really returned to this concept, but I was looking forward to seeing its evolution in future titles. I suppose Adventure 2 will just have to be special in that way. Adventure 2 ended up being special in several ways, thanks to the direction that the following games took. Sonic 06 was supposed to be a sort of Sonic Adventure 3, but due to the results, Sonic Adventure 2 often gets remembered as a series peak and a gold standard for many fans. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Sonic Adventure 2 is remembered fondly for good reason. Despite the Mech and Emerald Hunt stages never really comparing to the heights of the Sonic and Shadow Speed stages, they still offer unique ideas and occasionally fun moments. Like Adventure 1, it glows with charm and is certainly an experience I'll never forget. Even having played the prior 2D games, these versions of the characters will forever be my versions of them. 10 out of 10. No notes. Sonic Adventure 2 is everything a Sonic game should be. Fast-paced, energetic, and overflowing with character. My favorite one so far, for sure. I didn't own a copy of Sonic Heroes for console, so I ended up playing the Abandonware PC port. It was a nightmare getting the game to run correctly with the multiple quality of life mods and performance patches that I needed. I had been warned that Sonic Heroes was a significant departure, so unlike the Sonic fans from that time, I was afforded hindsight and was better able to keep my expectations in check. However, despite my best efforts, I still frequently found myself wishing the game was more like Adventure 2, especially early on. My initial impressions weren't great. Gone was the immaculate style and sincerity of the adventure games. In its place was a corny theme song and flattened characters. Once I actually took control and began the first level, my feelings started to warm up some. Seaside Hill is a fantastic first level. Sure, it looks reminiscent of Green Hill and Emerald Coast, but the visual variety and new gameplay mechanics help it stand out among those previous starting stages. By the end of that first level, I mostly understood how the game expected me to play it. If I'm being honest, most of the game's level design is pretty solid. Off the top of my head, the only levels that I really didn't like were the 2 casino levels and Mystic Mansion. The hardest thing to get past is the new gameplay gimmick of swapping characters to perform different tasks. Once I eventually got it into my head that I needed to slow down a bit and play the game how it wanted to be played instead of trying to play it like Sonic Adventure 2, I was able to really enjoy it. The various instrumental tracks for the stage themes were great. The team gameplay had a lot of depth to it, and levels like Frog Forest and Egg Fleet were a lot of fun to play every time I was made to do so. Where I think the game really fails is in its structure. Like the previous 2 games, there is a final boss fight only available after completing each team's story. Unlike before, Sonic Heroes contains Chaos Emerald stages, similar to the 2D games, and acquiring every emerald is also necessary for unlocking the final story. That structure worked in the adventure games because every story was different enough to merit completing. Sonic Heroes presents the different teams instead as difficulty choices. Team Rose is the easiest, Team Dark is the hardest, and Team Sonic is medium difficulty. Team Chaotic comes with an additional mission objective to clear before finishing the stages. However, the levels themselves go mostly unchanged between the different teams. What that amounts to is the game requiring the player to run through it 4 whole times. After 4 playthroughs, my issues with the game started to outweigh the positives. The voice acting was fine, but I would hear the same handful of lines over and over again. The boss fights were passable, but incredibly tedious when played more than once. Even some levels that I once enjoyed became grating after the 2nd or 3rd time through them. The Emerald stages are mandatory if you want to fight the final boss, and they aren't exactly fun either. The story might suffice for some as reason enough to play every team, but the writing is a whole lot less interesting than Sonic Adventure 2. I knew Shadow was going to reappear after Adventure 2 because of the existence of his standalone spin-off game, but his inclusion in Sonic Heroes leaves a lot of his characterization behind. Is he a clone? Is he a robot? In fact, all of the characters in Sonic Heroes felt lacking in depth or nuance. Rouge was like an entirely different character. Amy was given a single-minded obsession with Sonic, and the new characters like Cream and Omega only seemed to exist for filling their roles in their respective teams. I never got around to playing Knuckles Chaotix, but Team Chaotix and Heroes lost their charm for me pretty quickly. I'm sure children might find them funny. I certainly didn't.
I mean, it is made for children.
Yeah. Metal Sonic returned to be the main villain, but he didn't get to keep his iconic look after going kaiju. Every team got a chance to contribute in that final fight, but I was beyond sick of the game by that point. When I did finally finish Sonic Heroes, I was left with a fairly negative outlook on it overall. I had a laundry list of issues and only a handful of nice things to say about it. However, having put some distance between myself and the game, I think it can be surprisingly fun with the right approach. I can definitely see myself returning to Sonic Heroes at some point in the future, but just not anytime soon, and certainly not with any desire to complete it again. Now, before I moved on to the next game in my list, Sonic 06, I considered taking a short detour. The end of Shadow's story in Sonic Heroes sort of implied that he was not the real Shadow, and was only a robot or clone. But also that the original was maybe still alive somewhere. As silly as it sounds, I had become invested in Shadow's character after Adventure 2 and wanted to know what happened to him. I was thinking about adding Shadow the Hedgehog to my list of games and playing that next instead of Sonic 06. But I wasn't sure yet if that was a good idea. The only Sonic games I remembered playing in my childhood were Sonic Riders, Sonic Unleashed, and Shadow the Hedgehog, all for PlayStation 2. I didn't remember much about those games, except that Sonic Riders was a lot of fun, and that the other two games were not. Did I really want to sit through an entire game with Shadow's angst while he rides a motorcycle and shoots guns? Since I was still having such a tough time deciding what to do, I started up Sonic Riders for old time's sake while I contemplated my next step. Why don't I hear people praise Sonic Riders more often? I was just going to play the game for an hour or so while I decided what to play next, but I got so sidetracked that I ended up completing the game's entire story mode. The art direction is perfectly stylized, and the gameplay is unlike any other racing games that I've played. It might not make a ton of sense on the surface to have a Sonic racing game on hoverboards, but it completely works. Like I mentioned several times in reference to the classic Sonic games, Sonic is cool, and Sonic Riders is probably the coolest that Sonic has been, in my opinion. The character redesigns, the trick system, surfing literal waves of wind all contribute to this overwhelming feeling of cool. The new characters of Jet, Wave, and Storm are great foils for the heroes. Jet may not be Shadow the Hedgehog, but he's still a perfect rival for Sonic. I'm surprised I don't hear fans clamoring for more Jet. I don't have too much to say about Riders except that it deserves to be re-examined by gamers at large. I'll definitely be playing that game more in the future and recommend anybody who hasn't played it to give it a try. There's a fan overhaul mod called Sonic Riders DX that I can vouch for, and it brings true magic out of the game. So I did end up deciding that I wanted to play Shadow the Hedgehog, due to some combination of completionist mentality and a desire to learn Shadow's true fate. I was thinking it can't be too bad, maybe a little tone deaf. Starting the game confused me a lot more than I was expecting, though. There was some kind of alien invasion going on, Shadow still had amnesia, and there were all of these branching pathways through the levels. That's the game's defining mechanic, the story choices and multiple endings. There are 10 endings in total, and I needed to see all of them before being able to access the final story and true ending of the game. The individual stages offered a variety of gunplay, vehicle sections, and platforming, none of which was fun, and all of which were bland or underdeveloped. I played one path through the game. I think it was one of the center neutral paths. It ended with Shadow declaring that he was an android and deciding to rule the world with an android army or something. I don't remember exactly, but it didn't really satisfy me, so I did another playthrough, a second attempt where I tried doing only evil objectives. I finished the game with the Pure Dark ending where Shadow defeats Sonic and chooses to destroy the damn planet. This is where I gave up on the game. I hunted down footage of the true ending, revealing that, spoiler alert, Shadow was indeed the real Shadow all along. I can say confidently that I found no redeeming qualities in that game and was happy that I didn't play it an additional 8 times for that ending. I almost hoped that Shadow the Hedgehog would be worse than it ended up being. At least then I would have been entertained. There were a handful of cutscenes that gave me a little chuckle in how comically edgy they were, but those scenes aren't at all worth how unbearably boring the whole game is. I mean, it was fine, everything technically worked. I just wanted to be doing literally anything else. For a game so over the top in its premise, it surprised me by being the least interesting game in the series thus far. I disliked the game so much that I was actually looking forward to playing the infamous Sonic 06 just to finally be done with Shadow the Hedgehog. Sonic 06 has a reputation for being one of the worst games ever made, and it didn't take long for me to understand why. The game introduces itself with an entertaining enough CG cinematic, but the transition to in-game visuals was exceptionally jarring. It's never been uncommon for a game to have pre-rendered cutscenes that look much better than gameplay, but the incongruity in Sonic 06 immediately took me out of it. I wouldn't be surprised if players turned the game off right here, after seeing the horrifying Eggman redesign without the pre-rendered lighting to help ease the burden on your eyes. This is where I'll admit that Robotnik's new look was my least favorite aspect of the entire game. It drove me crazy whenever he was on screen. Sonic and his animal acquaintances still had cartoon proportions, so I didn't understand at all the logic behind trying to make Eggman look more realistically human. When the gameplay actually started, though, I understood on a deeper level why the game is remembered the way that it is. It's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it, but fuck. Sonic is not fun to control at all. The hub world returned from Sonic Adventure, but was phenomenally and foundationally boring. Getting into the first level, Wave Ocean, it was a lot like Emerald Coast, only if the player had no control over their character and the environment was consistently trying to kill you. It was a shame because I really wanted to like the game. It was almost like an underdog story. I wanted the game to prove to me that everyone had been too hard on it. Instead, I was simply dumbfounded by the fact that the game existed in that state at all. During the first stage, after a few game overs, I realized something. If I wanted to finish the game, and I very much did, I would have to fight with it. The game is constantly trying to break you, but if you learn to play by its rules, you can find the right finesse to sneak through each level without alerting the glitches. Being careful enough to not break the game was part of the challenge. Not taking alternate routes, not hunting for optional secrets, and certainly not taking too many risks. A peculiar thing happened though. After finishing a few of Sonic's stages, I started to enjoy myself. This is where I might lose you, but I think there's a unique sort of fun that Sonic 06 provides. A kind of experience that doesn't come around super often. Like a movie that's so bad it's good. Sonic 06 is almost always entertaining, even if it isn't in the ways that it means to be. When I wasn't genuinely enjoying aspects of the level design that maybe wouldn't be too bad in more stable software, I was experimenting with the wonky physics or laughing at the unexpected death. Forget for a moment what you think of when you consider a game to be good. Is it enough for an experience to be fun, or does it need to also show intention? Is Tommy Wiseau's The Room an iconic comedy or a failure of a drama? You've heard of The Room, right?
Yeah, famously bad movie with a cult following.
Okay, so I tend to look at the end result of a work instead of judging it based on its proximity to the artist's original intention. As far as I'm concerned, The Room is a comedy, even if it wasn't meant to be. Sonic 06 is a goofy game. It's buggy, it's campy, and it's hard to take seriously, but it's kind of why I love it. There was a moment sometime in the Shadow's story where one of the voice actors screwed up their line before having to repeat everything from the beginning, and all of it was left in the game.
Agent Shadow, E123 Omega has engaged Mephiles. Head to the Wave Ocean, head to Wave Ocean. Agent Shadow, E123 Omega has engaged Mephiles. Head to Wave Ocean immediately.
It's as if no one had time to notice that a piece of mandatory dialogue was so obviously cut wrong, and it's far enough into the game that most players will never hear it. Now, don't let my positive attitude towards Sonic 06 fool you. It wasn't always a good time. Shadow and newcomer Silver each have their own stories in Sonic 06, and they're both notably less fun than Sonic's. Shadow is more combat-oriented and gets shackled to some pretty painful vehicle segments. Silver is puzzle-focused, using his telekinetic abilities to fly around and throw things. Shadow may have been more boring, but Silver was occasionally a nightmare. The words "Silver's dusty desert" still send a shiver down my spine. There's an incredibly long section near the end where the player needs to slowly push a ball through a hallway littered with holes. Embarrassingly, that part alone took me nearly 40 minutes. I'll never forget running up and down that hallway, watching the ball slowly roll into one of the holes over and over and over again. What a disaster. However, blended in with all of that jank and frustration are colorful visuals, diverse environments, and a sincerely stunning soundtrack. Seriously, if nothing else, any self-respecting Sonic fan owes it to themselves to listen to that soundtrack. No irony there, just dope music. It may have occasionally been one of the worst games ever made, but after digging into it, I discovered a lot to like about Sonic 06. It won't be a game for everyone, but I will vouch for its merit. Sonic 06 is a one-of-a-kind experience, and I'm proud to have been able to finish it.
Did you play the fan remake, Project 06?
Of course I did. I was just about to mention that, actually. I learned of Project 06 while I was researching the best method to play Sonic 06. I couldn't decide whether to play on Xbox 360 or emulator. Emulation offered much better load times, so I settled on that after playing a few levels of Sonic's story on Xbox and becoming extremely impatient with the loading. I looked into potential mods to improve the experience of Sonic 06, but unfortunately didn't have much luck. Instead, many people online were recommending this fan-made, ground-up remake called Project 06. I didn't feel right playing a remake before the original, especially since it changed so much about the game, so I ended up landing on a modless playthrough of the original on emulator. However, after I finished the base game, I downloaded Project 06 just to try it out. I was immediately impressed by how much better it felt to control. All of a sudden, the mostly unchanged level design shined as though it had come from a more competent game. I ended up playing through every Sonic stage and a handful of the other character stages as well. What can I say? Project 06 is fantastic. It's a true testament to the actual quality of the original game's level design. The structure was changed to a more arcade style, like level select instead of a hub world with NPC dialogue and cutscenes. I actually think that if you're at all interested in Sonic 06, you should probably just start with Project 06. I loved a lot about the original, and I'm glad I played it, but I still boot up Project 06 to this day. Project 06 is a miracle, and possibly a contender for best 3D Sonic game, depending on who you ask. I did say that I wasn't planning to play Sonic Unleashed, but after learning more about the series and the context that Sonic Unleashed was made in, I just didn't feel right skipping it. I had been informed by my friend that Sonic 06 did serious damage to public opinion on the series, and so it was decided that the next game would abandon the adventure-style gameplay in favor of something entirely new. That new style would end up sticking around and informing the direction that 3D Sonic games would take going forward. What fans refer to as the Boost era started with Sonic Unleashed. It was clear from the onset that the production value had increased from Sonic 06. The opening cinematic was probably my favorite in the series since Sonic CD and its Sonic Boom intro. Then, Sonic became a werewolf. I will preface that I have some anecdotal context for the game. I had always heard that fans didn't love the night stages or Sonic's new goofy comrade Chip. As usual, I tried to be positive about those aspects anyway, but it wasn't easy. The nighttime stages aren't awful, however they do drag, and hardly offer anything that would resemble a reason to desire replaying. The Sonic Unleashed daytime stages are immaculate though. They play sort of like the auto-running sections from Sonic 06, but with a boost button and variable routes. As much as I did mourn the adventure-style gameplay, those stages are some of the most replayable levels I've ever experienced in any game. They're tightly paced, set-piece-driven reaction challenges. I can recall, right now, numerous moments from numerous levels in the game. Individual obstacles that might appear and disappear in seconds are more memorable than some entire games. Certainly more memorable than any of the nighttime stages that they're unfairly bundled with. And there's the rub. Unfortunately, Sonic Unleashed is a double-edged sword. Not only are the night stages mandatory to complete the game, but you're also made to hunt down coins to unlock following levels, and that further drags the pace of the game down. At multiple points in the game, against my wishes, I had to butcher the natural flow of a daytime stage and slow down to a complete stop to grab a coin. I even had to replay 2 of the werewolf levels because I missed some coins. Playing Sonic Unleashed is like walking through a desert to reach the oasis that you can clearly see, but is barely outside of your comfortable walking distance. By the time you make it to that lush, green, hydrated pocket of life, you're exhausted and can't even fully enjoy it. So I played the night stages as quickly as I could and replayed the day stages as many times as I wanted, which was a lot. There was also 2 or 3 flying stages that basically amount to pressing the button prompts in the right order, a parade of QuickTime events, if you will. Those stages were profoundly forgettable. The story was light on side characters, choosing to mainly focus on Sonic, Tails, and the new companion Chip. I didn't mind that choice, but it felt strange coming off of Sonic 06 where every extra character got a playable section of level. Now's the time where I'll admit to my compulsory contrarian opinion on Unleashed. Chip grew on me? I'd go as far to say that I like the character. He isn't charming or funny or even intentionally likable, but he endeared himself to me by the end of the game. He was a goofy little guy that was shackled to me for the whole experience, and I couldn't help but grow attached to him. I understand, though, if not everyone else has as much patience for the annoyance as I do. In retrospect, out of all of the Sonic games that I've played, oddly, Sonic Unleashed is the one that I have the urge to return to most often. I probably won't ever have the patience to push through every nighttime stage again, but now that I've gotten a completed save file, I still boot it up to run a stage every now and again. I've got that S-Rank addiction. I first played the game through an Xbox 360 emulator, which came with its own problems. However, after I finished the game, the fan community suddenly released Unleashed Recompiled, a miracle, unofficial port of Sonic Unleashed for PC. Honestly, the recompilation came out like 2 days after I first saw the credits roll on Unleashed. I was able to move my completed save file directly into Unleashed Recompiled, and that's how I've played ever since. I recommend anyone who hasn't given the game a chance to download the recompilation and play it for themselves. If you don't have the patience, which I understand, it's fairly simple to find an already finished save file from online so you can at least play through the daytime stages. My favorites are probably Arid Sands and Dragon Road. If Sonic Team could just capture the magic of those Unleashed daytime stages throughout a full-length game without leaning on other gimmicks, we'd have an easy masterpiece on our hands. Can't say they didn't try. Having played by that point Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic Unleashed without planning to, I figured I'd also sneak Sonic Colors onto that list. I'll cut right to it. I didn't love Sonic Colors. You would think on paper that it would work for me, seeing as my main issue with Unleashed was the nighttime stages. A Sonic game that's just the Unleashed day stages sounds great, but that isn't really what Sonic Colors is. I was excited to start Colors. I played the Nintendo Wii version since I had heard mixed things about the remaster Sonic Colors Ultimate. The game drops you into the first act without any context, and it looks great. The Space Amusement Park theme is a fun one with plenty of color and creativity, not to mention that constructing large, complex structures for Sonic to run around in doesn't feel so out of place in that context like it might have in other games. I immediately noticed that the Hedgehog's handling was significantly weaker in Colors than Unleashed. But that's comparing a Wii game to an Xbox 360 game, so it didn't seem fair. It wasn't until the second act that I started seriously questioning the game's quality. Act 1 felt like it ended before it even started, and Act 2 felt like a cheap, generic 2D platformer. That basically describes its entirety, I think. Sonic Colors felt like a cheap knockoff of the Unleashed day stages. The levels in Unleashed had a lot of depth. They weren't so long as to not be replayable, but long enough to feel substantial. Colors doesn't even try. The stages are all little sprints. Similarly, Unleashed did have 2D sections in its levels, but they almost always felt seamless and were just there for variety and pacing. Colors is almost entirely 2D, with the 3D sections amounting to flashy on-rail segments in an otherwise flat game, like the camera rotation in Sonic CD. There isn't anything wrong with a game being 2D, but The controls were notably worse than all of the classic 2D games. There's a much larger focus on slowing down and doing little platforming puzzles with the new Wisp power-ups. The boost fuel was even changed from rings to wisps, and they appear in significantly lower quantity. I spent a lot more of the game running around with the boost gauge on empty than I did in Unleashed. The game also switches to a map-based stage layout, much like a Mario game. Come to think of it, the wisps also sort of feel like a Mario mechanic. And the space gimmick is perhaps a little too close in time to Super Mario Galaxy to simply be a coincidence. It feels like a Mario game, but without the polish and game feel that those titles are known for. It's a shame, honestly, because every stage has an interesting visual identity. I just wish that instead of 6 acts of mostly filler surrounding a handful of cool moments, there were just 7 tight, trimmed down, memorable levels. What was there instead was unfortunately too easy, too short, and too unmemorable to do anything for me. And the writing? My God, I can't imagine how they could have made it any worse. The humor was one of the elements that greatly held the game back for me. Sure, I could have just skipped all the cutscenes, but why am I even playing at that point? I did finish the game, and it didn't take long, but the memory of it is a big blur. All that stuck around were some of those cheesy-ass lines. I genuinely wish I enjoyed Sonic Colors more, but the only word I actually need to describe the game is shallow. At least the previous bad games were still bold. Now, there's only one game left to discuss, the game that all of this has been leading to, but let's take a quick detour. The whole time I've been playing the Sonic games, one thing was consistent: the fandom. Sonic fans are a different breed, for better or for worse. The commitment, the dedication to this series is both admirable and horrifying. Every time I had a problem with one of the games not running right or being released with an abundance of bugs, I discovered that the fan community had mostly already solved it. If not, they had created some better alternative. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 would have given me a much worse first-time experience if it wasn't for mods restoring the PC ports to the glory of their Dreamcast versions, and with modern upgrades as well. Sonic Heroes would have actually been unplayable had it not been for the various mods holding the ancient PC port together. I never got around to trying it, but I've heard there's a mod for Shadow the Hedgehog called Reloaded that tries to solve many of the game's more aggravating issues. Sonic 06 would obviously not have much of a following today if it wasn't for Project 06 reviving interest in the game and showing people that there was still a lot to salvage from it. Sonic Unleashed recently had an entire recompilation port built just because fans wanted to get the most out of the game since Sega had abandoned it. So to celebrate the fans that have always brought and still bring so much substance to the series that wasn't there before, I decided to pick out a couple of original Sonic fan games to play. The first one I tried was Sonic Utopia, a game in the style of classic Sonic but in a 3D world. The game is only a demo, but for having so little content, it's surprisingly fun to just zone out in. I played that demo for about an hour or so, and I had a blast just running around, building speed. Sonic Utopia is hard evidence that a game like this can not only work, but can be a worthy alternative to the 3D Sonic of today. Next, I played Sonic GT, a game that asks the question, what if 3D Sonic games prioritized freedom of movement over linear time trials with carefully planned set pieces? The result is a greatly liberating movement system that lets the player fly through the more open level design. It isn't super polished, much like Utopia, and I felt like the game didn't really need voice acting, but I'm not going to criticize a fan game too heavily. It didn't take me too long to play through, and what is there is extremely entertaining. I followed that up with a 2D game, Sonic and the Fallen Star. That game was amazing. If you told me it was an official Sonic game produced by Sega, I might believe you. It has an incredibly unique visual style and musical identity. The levels make you earn your speed, but that isn't really a bad thing. I'd recommend Fallen Star to any fan of classic Sonic games. The last game I want to mention is Sonic Roboblast 2. Plenty of Sonic fans are already familiar with that game, but for good reason. It was one of the earliest Sonic fan games to be released, I think. It was built with the Doom engine to recreate the style of the Genesis games. Roboblast 2 is a great game in its own right, but it's also notable for being a popular modding platform. Different character sprites, new level packs, even a kart racer was built on top of Sonic Roboblast 2. Fan games on top of fan games, all the way down until you hit Doom. And I love Doom. In playing these fan games, I came to realize something important. I have a profound respect for Sonic fans. I wish for your approval, and I want desperately to be one of you. I think Sonic fans put up with a lot of shit from people who don't really understand. I mean, it's just a series about anthropomorphic animals who move fast. Why would anyone care so much? Especially when it seems like sometimes even the company who owns it doesn't even care. But I get it now. I understand the Sonic fan. Not simply because I have also cared deeply about things that no one else seems to, but because I've walked in the Sonic fan's shoes. I've played so many Sonic games by this point, and they aren't always great. Hell, sometimes they're not even good. However, the love for the character and the desire to run around at high speeds keeps us captivated. We know what a great Sonic game looks like, and we felt the potential. My goal in all of this was to become a real Sonic fan, and my rubric for grading my success was whether I could fully appreciate Sonic Generations, not just as an individual work, but as fan service. I wanted to understand every callback and reference. I wanted to feel the nostalgia in every level, genuinely. I wanted to have really done my homework, and after Sonic Colors, I was finally ready. Sonic Generations has always been pitched to me as the exception. During a time when quality Sonic titles were hard to come by, Generations was an unambiguously solid release, and everyone knew it. Back then, before I had any real experience with Sonic, I would often hear lifelong Sonic haters conclude their criticisms of the series with, "except for Generations." I was fortunate to play Sonic Generations for the first time with the prerequisite experience to recognize every character and stage from previous titles. I had a fresh recollection of many of the things that Generations was calling back to. What better circumstances could there be to finally get to play it? So after a handful of months and over 20 Sonic games, I did. I played the shit out of it. I got every red star ring and completed every mission with an S rank. Aside from a handful of annoying missions, the game was absolutely stellar, front to back. I was worried the levels might feel derivative since they all come from prior games, but they're basically completely new stages with a familiar coat of paint. If I had to nitpick, I'd say that the 2D Sonic gameplay isn't as strong as the classic titles, but that is after having already played Sonic Mania, so the bar was much higher. The strongest aspect of Sonic Generations was the 3D stages, with plenty of exciting set pieces and multiple routes to optimize your run. The structure of the game, I think, was a major culprit in my enjoyment of it. There wasn't much to distract from the main stages, and the mandatory missions to move forward are mostly replaying levels that I already liked. I could complain about the story, but it hardly exists as anything substantial. Sonic Generations was all about having an excuse for the gameplay. There wasn't even really a setting, instead just taking place in a large white void that accommodates all of the varied stages. I don't know. I've been writing about art for a long time now, and I always try to conclude my analysis with some point to it all, some desperate attempt to say something profound. You know, Sonic Generations was good. It was great, even. I played it a lot. I guess I just wanted to feel different. Like, when I finally became a Sonic fan, I would know, and I would have some great revelation about my time with the series. An epiphany. In the end, I was left with the same question I'd been fighting with the whole time. What makes one a Sonic fan? What makes one a fan of anything? Did I need to have some life-altering experience? Did I need to enjoy every release? I don't know, but I did discover that I like a lot more Sonic games than I expected to. I see myself returning to some of these games several more times in the future. And I'm sort of eager to keep going. I've already purchased Sonic Lost World, Sonic Forces, Sonic Frontiers, and Sonic X Shadow Generations to play on my own time. I know some of these titles are heavily criticized, but I want to know for myself. And maybe that's all it takes to be a Sonic fan. Giving these games the benefit of the doubt and seeing the good in them, even when it isn't easy.
Is that all?
Yeah. I guess I've said all I have to say.
All right. You'll get a letter from us soon that'll have your result in it.
Well, thank you.